from three people appointed by the governor, two people appointed by the mayor, so it has more state control. They voted to make Worcester a charter school, and that pretty much upset a lot of us and started to me to think, well, we really need to get rid of the School Reform Commission, which has been around since the early 2000s. Um, but the only way you could do that is either through the School Reform Commission getting rid of themselves or the legislature voting the School Reform Commission out of commission. It never occurred to me that the School Reform Commission would vote themselves out, and they thought the only way at that point was legislatively. But that was one thing that bothered me. The other thing that bothered me a few months later was that the school budget had been approved well, it had been tacitly approved. Wolf really didn't sign off on it, but he let the budget go through. The budget was already 9 months late, and Wolf felt himself in the corner, and he felt that he really needed to do something to get this budget passed. So he let it let it be passed against his will. So, but the reason why he was holding it up as long as he was because he was looking for more money for education. He was looking for $400 million. The budget ended up with 200 million additional dollars. Now that's still an increase, but you have to remember that in 2012, Governor Corbett cut the education budget by $1 billion. So this was rather paltry as far as things were concerned. So these two things made me think, well, we really have to look a little bit further than how we're doing local advocacy. So I started thinking that like we're really affected in a lot of ways by the state, and like these are a few ways. And I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list, but these are the things that got to me. One of the ways in which the state kind of shortchanges Philadelphia to a great extent is through this idea called preemption. And I'm not a lawyer, so there's probably people in this room that could probably explain this a lot better than I can. But what preemption says is that a locality cannot enact a law that's more stringent than what the state law already is. And they're able to implement that in a lot of different ways. But in Philadelphia, in particular, we get really victimized by this in a number of ways, and particularly with regard to gun legislation. We're not able to enact any gun legislation that's actually been successful, I think, in any way, shape, or form. We've tried to limit ghost guns, we've tried to limit lost and stolen guns, but the state has always shot us down. And this becomes a problem, as we well know, particularly like in the northwestern part of the city. Um, the state shortchanges us in Philadelphia through school funding and like funding in public transportation. Now, the state shortchanges a lot of different districts, and we're not even the worst school district that gets defunded. But this is one of the things that the state shortchanges us with. With regard to public transportation, you've all seen the sign "Save the Train." Um, that's all because of what the money is that we get from the state. Um, there's other ways I'm sure that Philadelphia is hurt. The Pennsylvania Economy League has done a few studies to show that in the southeastern part of the state, we contribute a lot more to the state coffers in terms of taxes, but we get less services for what we're putting out there. So, so all these things, like really become, like really present a problem. And then with regard to, well, I'm not sure how to get rid of this, but with regard to the public school takeover, we're not the only school that's ever been taken. We're not the only district that's ever been taken over by the state, Harrisburg, Chester. But the state always does it with the idea that they're going to really improve education in these places, and they really do a crappy job. So, so these are just three things that made me think we really need to do something with regard to what's happening at the state level because it really affects Philadelphia. So I'm not sure why I'm not able to. Well, okay, finally, this pretty much sums up what the problem is between the state and the city. Like we have our own agenda, as you can see by all the things that are piled up on the left. But the state, like they're saying, oh, what Philadelphia really needs is, like is for Larry Krasner, like the DA to, like to basically be impeached because, like the crappy job that he's doing. Um, so, like with that said, I started thinking about the slogan "Think locally, think globally, act locally," and here's what the definition is, and what that means as far as Philadelphia goes. So, if we apply the idea to Philadelphia, we determine the problem, thinking globally. What are the outside forces primarily impacting the city? And the answer to, like that I came up with at the time was the state. And then it's deciding on the course of action, which is acting locally. What actions can we take that affect changes at the local level? And up until 2016, what I was doing in conjunction with what a lot of other people were doing was to, well, we have to change things within our own localities. We have to change what the, like what the political makeup is, like in our own districts. And the way we do that is to campaign for candidates in our state and federal districts whose values match ours. So here, like in the past number of years, we've elected Art Haywood, Chris Rabb, Dwight Evans to office, and it's certainly we believe that a number of us believe that they may be the best incumbents. People voted for their opponents, and they believe that they were the opponent. They were the best candidates for the job. But in the end, we for the most part we're pretty much happy with the representatives that we have. But then we have to ask ourselves, has that helped? And the answer to there to like to that, as far as I was concerned, was no. We voted for all our local candidates into office, that match our values, but the problem still persists. So what's the solution? And what I came up with back in 2016 was that we need to campaign for candidates outside of the city. So as I said, like here's what the problem is. We need to talk about Pennsylvania's legislature, and what principles can we apply to the local actions that will affect the changes at the local level, the types of changes I talked about? Like how do we need to think about these things? So one of the things was that we need to think about every state house, senate, and congressional seat in the district, in our, like in Philadelphia, um, or in Pennsylvania, as being an at-large position. So just like we have 7 at-large seats for city council, we have to think of every district seat outside the city as well as inside the city as at-large. We have to work for any of those for candidates in any of those seats whose values match ours, because there's magic numbers here. There's 102, which is the magic number for the state house. There's 203. There's 203 positions in the state house. We have to think that 100. We have to get to at least 102. And it's interesting because right now the state house is split between 102 and 101, but we need 102 people that think the same way that we do in the Pennsylvania House. We need to think about 25. We need to think about 25 with regard to the state senate, because 25 out of 50 makes at least half the state senate. Hopefully, the way that we think, with the lieutenant governor as a deciding vote. Hopefully, and I'm thinking along certain party lines here when I say that, but like with the lieutenant governor, that's the deciding vote. So we would get what we need at the senatorial level, and then at the congressional level, it would be we have 17 seats right now. We need to think that 9 of those seats need to be people that think the way that we do. Let me go back here. So we need to do a better job connecting the issues with the candidates, and what I mean by that is that we do a good job if we're canvassing or we're phone banking. we do a pretty good job saying, well, vote for such and such because they're really good on women's health, they're really good on crime, they're really good on gun legislation, and that's great. But we're doing that maybe 2, 3 months out of the year. Um, we really need to think about what happens the rest of the year, and we need to think about the opportunities that that we leave on the table. So I just have one example, and Bill's probably familiar with this as well. There was one candidate we were canvassing for in Montgomery County, and we were drawing the distinction between her and the incumbent. The incumbent had a terrible record with regard to the environment. But when we went to constituents' homes, they would say, this guy's great. Why is he great? Because he was able to get equipment installed in his district that took the PFAS out of the water. And that's great. It was a terrific constituent service. But the disservice that he did to Pennsylvania was pretty bad because his environmental record was close to single digits. So what opportunities do we have when we're not campaigning that we can affect change at that level? And then finally, we need to place our biggest efforts in flippable races, which in 2024 makes a lot of sense, particularly in a swing state like Pennsylvania. I think we all pretty much understand what this means. But back in 2016, I would be talking to a lot of people that I knew, and what they were interested in doing was, well, I want to put my money or I want to go out and canvass for so and so because they're against this incumbent that has a really terrible record as far as the things that I'm concerned about. But that's not how you basically affect change. You really need to affect change when, like on the races that you have a chance of winning. And that was not immediately clear then, but I think it's a lot clearer now. And I think I'm probably speaking to the choir here when I talk about that. So my group is Blue Pennsylvania, and we've been involved with elections since 2000. Actually, we were involved with these types of issues before the presidential election of 2016. And a lot of groups have actually started since 2016 because of what 2016 did. But we'd actually started a little bit before, and I think we got a little bit of a head start. But at any rate, so one of the things was one of our bigger successes, I think, was back in 2018 when we were looking at a lot of the midterm elections. Um, there was a big event, March for Our Lives, in March of 2018, and at that event, it was an event that basically was in response to the shootings at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. So people were going to these rallies. There were 6 rallies in the Philadelphia area, not counting Philadelphia, and we went armed with these flyers, and the flyers. I basically took out the incumbents' names and the challengers' names. The flyers actually had the names, of these people on there, and we gave them out. So what would normally happen is that a speaker would say, and one of the things you really need to do when you get back is to vote, and people would clap their hands and rally around that and everything. But the truth was that, as I said, with the environmental example that I gave earlier, they didn't know where their candidates stood on these particular issues, and this was 6 months out or 8 months out of the election. So it gave them something that was like that was tangible that they could hang up and say, and at election time they say, well, this person, I remember going to this rally and this person was really bad, like our incumbent is really bad, we need to vote for the challenger. So that was the purpose of this. And again, I think we were probably about the only group that was doing something like this at that time. And then we've done some similar things with environmental rallies. We did this. It was a sunrise rally. We didn't have candidates' names on it, because it was either like November or December of that year, and candidates had really not announced. But we gave them the opportunity to go to various places. Like we gave them the information as to where to get the that type of data. And then this was a flyer that we never really distributed. We were intending to leaflet it in like in various households, but after 2020, for before 2020, the issues were education, the environment, minimum wage. But after 2020, there was a new issue, and that new issue was democracy. Democracy, for the first time, was on the ballot. So this was an opportunity to pretty much explain that to people. We never distributed it because there was another environmental flyer that we actually distributed to households. But it was something that I wanted to do something with. And one of the things that I liked about it was that it was specific to particular communities. So for this one, it was Upper Dublin, and it talked a little bit about what was happening in Upper Dublin. So it was really targeted. We did this kind of like as a mail merge, and like I wish I had the opportunity, and hopefully I will never need this opportunity again. But if the opportunity arises, we could do something like this, or at least we could do the mail merge kind of flyer for another type of issue. And this was a conference that we had run in Doylestown it was a pro-democracy conference back in 2023. And the midterms and presidential elections weren't on the schedule at that point, but we had school board elections. And the school board elections, you probably remember, had a lot of anti-democratic candidates, and unfortunately, anti-democratic incumbents that were part of a lot of these school boards, particularly in Bucks County. So it was really good that we did this in Doylestown, and we had Red, Wine, and Blue. We had March on Harrisburg. We had Tim Brennan, who we had actually elected into office. And one of the reasons we had elected him into office was because he was running on a pro-democracy platform. So these were the types of speakers that we had. Was actually changed. We changed the title to A Slice of Democracy because we were serving pizza at the event, and we thought that would entice people, and at the same time, we thought it was cute. So let me see. I can admit, let's see, Marshall. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Um, so now, as far as now, we have gotten into advocacy per se, and not trying to, basically talk about the good guys and the bad guys. But we've done the same type of advocacy that you've probably seen in other places where somebody's contacted you by email and said, and this particular bill is coming up, so please vote for this bill. Here's how you, or please get your representatives to vote for this bill. This is how you can do it, and you press a button. It gives you a template. You could change the template, but it goes to your state reps, or it goes to your congressperson or whatever. We've done some similar types of things at Blue, Pennsylvania, but one of the things that we added was we have a feedback loop in there, so that for the people that you have done this, we if the bill does go to a committee vote, or or it goes to the floor vote, it's a way to say how their particular representatives voted. So that's built in. We haven't actually used that at this point, but because unfortunately it's never the bills that we've advocated for have not gone to a floor vote at this point. But but the mechanism's there. One of the last things that we did was so you know that in June there was a budget with a record amount of money, particularly for education. And that was kind of moved on. You probably also know there was a lawsuit, and Commonwealth Court voted or Commonwealth Court agreed with the plaintiffs that the state funding is unconstitutional. Josh Shapiro came up. Well, there was a basic education commission that came up with a plan. Josh Shapiro said, "Well, I'd like to, make 7 years, make this 7 years before, like before we can get to a full and fair budget with regard to education." Um, so he came up with a 7 year plan, and there was a state house bill 2370 that pretty much was pushing that. So we had volunteers contact um, 229 by email, 229 school board members in districts that were underfunded. And these underfunded districts were also in flippable senatorial districts. So it put more pressure on at least the state senators to go along with it, but it also went out to the state reps. Never actually made it to the Senate, but at any rate, we hit 29 school districts, like in two, and school board members, and 229 school board members in those 29 school districts. This is what the email looked like, and again, it was tailored towards that particular school district. Um, and this is feedback that we gave the volunteers about, the bill actually passed the House, and the bill passed the House with one person in one of those districts that we were talking about. He actually had gone along with who would have normally voted with his party, but he didn't vote with his party. He actually went along with like with what what the other party had asked for. So, and I redacted all of this because it has to do with partisan politics. So, um, and the very last thing that we've done, we had a postcard campaign in two districts in Western Pennsylvania, two senatorial districts um, that were also had school districts that were underfunded. These were targeted in those underfunded school districts to apartment dwellers. So we had 2,000 postcards that we actually mailed in the district, um, but 1,000 each for each of these senatorial candidates. And the hook that we were putting out there was we were saying that because I mean a lot of apartment dwellers they may feel we really don't have kids in the system or whatever. Why does this matter to us? Well, every place like in Philadelphia, every place except Philadelphia, the school board votes on property taxes, and property taxes also affect rents. So we figured we'd put something in there with regard to like rents, so that so that was an enticement for the people to like to look at our postcards. So this was what one of the what the postcards looked without the candidate's name on there. And so one of the things is that with all these types of things, what what kind of success can we look at in the future for Pennsylvania? Where because what are Pennsylvanians' values? What are we looking at here? And there was a very recent poll done by Spotlight PA that you might be familiar with if you get the Inquirer. They sometimes put the Spotlight articles in there. But if you look here, they ask people about a basket of issues with regard to background checks on firearms, $15 an hour minimum wage, and discrimination protections. It's basically asking all those questions together. How do you feel? And 44%, which was not a majority, but they strongly approved. They promptly approved of all three measures. 19% somewhat approved, so probably they weren't that enthusiastic about at least one of those measures. And then, but if you look at that compared to those that strongly disapprove and somewhat disapprove, um, there seems to be a lot of room for growth with regard to where we can go legislatively in the state when you compare people's values on the one hand and what the legislative makeup looks like on the other hand. We should be able to get a lot more bang for our buck. And hopefully thinking a little bit outside of the box with regard to ever with regard to whatever organization we're talking about will hopefully get us to that point. This was another poll that was given. You probably know about the past Lifeline scholarships that the Senate tried to put into the budget the last 2 years. They were not that successful, but this is what the way Pennsylvanians feel about it. There's and these are likely Pennsylvania voters. 53% oppose. When it well, certainly this is a sample. I believe it was a sample of about 800 people. But when the question was posed in this way, would you use $100 million in taxpayer money to establish a voucher program that sends public school students to private or religious schools? 53% voted, would have voted against, and 36% basically were in favor of it. So again, more progressive value. Majority of Pennsylvanians seem to agree with that. And finally, before I just leave you with the last thing I want to talk about, and hopefully we'll get sound for this. I'm not quite sure at this point, but these are some of the resources, and I could share this PowerPoint if you're interested. We're part of Philly Neighborhood Networks, Blue Pennsylvania, and this is our website information. If you're interested in finding out about particular candidates, or not candidates, but incumbents, where they stand on the issues, what their positions are, what their endorsements are, Vote Smart is a great resource. It basically gives you a whole lot of information on a whole different lot of topics. And then finally, at the bottom is my email address. So I'd like to leave you. I'm not sure if I'm going to have sound or not. Um, I'm not sure exactly where the sound's going to come through. But I'd like to leave you with this video, and we'll just see what happens. Okay. I'm gonna stop this for a second. I'm gonna stop this for a second. I'm not. I'm not. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is. Gotcha. There's. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. How do I start this? 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 So yeah. So answer. Yeah. My audio. My audio. Okay. In answer to your question, there's a number of districts that are underfunded, much more underfunded than Philadelphia. Reading, Pottstown, they're much more underfunded than Philadelphia. Rural districts, if you remember the original lawsuit, that at the Commonwealth Court, Renee Jubelier had the Justice Renee Jubelier decided back in what was it, 2023. The lawsuit, the plaintiffs of the lawsuit were the NAACP and the Association of Rural Schools. So there's a lot of rural schools, in fact, that and there were actually other plaintiffs as well, but they were two of the main plaintiffs in the case. So there's actually a lot of rural schools, a number of rural school districts that are vastly underfunded. And yes, you're right as well because a lot of those representatives are not are not voting to bring more money into those school districts. And this is the type of thing. These are the types of actions that we're trying to take to make people in those school districts, at least, more aware of what's going on at the state level, so that they can take action with their representatives, if that makes sense. So I'll try to I'll try to play it again. If not, we can I can share this with you. So let's see. Um, it's not okay. Let's see. Oops. Sorry, please. Okay. Let's try this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And 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 that's basically
Well,
okay.
you have to talk really loud and that mic expands. Okay, first, good morning, everybody here, and good morning, Ruth and Barb, and Marshall, and Robert Chaka, and Julie and Dick. Good morning to all of you. Okay, what he says, yes, right on. Totally. We happen to live in Northeast Philadelphia in the Fox Chase area, and for those of you who aren't familiar, think Fox Chase Cancer Center and then go north a mile to still in the city. And we have a contested state house race, Sean Dockerty, and we have a contested state senate race, Jimmy Dillon. Okay. So where are we putting our time and resources? Lots of people are doing things for Harris, and I fully agree, but we're putting our time and resources on the local, which needs to happen. One way, a couple things we've found out. One is, you all may be familiar with State Rep Tarek Khan, who's in the Roxborough area. Tarek is unopposed. Tarek is putting his time and resources into going around the state to districts that are vulnerable and flippable. And I happened to meet him in our district office one afternoon when I said I would go out. And I was nervously saying I would go knock on doors. I'm not used to doing this. This is not me. Why am I here? And in comes Tarek and says, why don't you come with me? Which was phenomenal. He's really good at it. Yes. And what's this Roxborough guy doing up in our district? But he was making it was great. Friends of Tarek Khan. It's one of these things that you can contribute to. He's raising money to put into everybody else's race. And you all can support him. He just had a fundraiser here in Mount Airy. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Elisa, give me a minute. I'll call you right back. That's why I'm talking fast and doing all this at once instead of raising my hand 3 times because I'm the liturgist and I've kind of done. So, yeah, look for Friends of Tarek Khan. And, we're all getting bombarded with stuff for the national, contribute to Harris, blah, blah, blah. We have not done that. We have contributed to Friends of Tarek Khan, and we have contributed to Represent PA. Thank you, Bill Ewing. Represent PA is working on the state house and state senate flippable districts. And they do breakfast briefings, which I love. And I think I would love to see more of you on this. But Bill is on them all the time. You probably got me on to it, Bill. Probably, yeah. But they've raised, several $1 million, a little bit ours, to support candidates in flippable districts and vulnerable candidates for progressive. I don't know how they say it, or progressive PA. So, and Chrissy Jacobs, who is a Mount Airy person, is, one of the key people on it. And my last thing, and then I call Lisa back. Especially in our area, there's a lot of Catholic people. We go to Mass when we don't have to do it, blah, 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 which is fine. Some great people. Nuns on the bus, and the network. And I love this equally sacred checklist that they've developed. I think it's one of the more useful things when people are kind of stuck with, especially when people are stuck on the abortion issue. And they are putting out the idea that the lives of the mother and the family are equally sacred, etc. So I just wanted to share all of that, and thank you, and thank you. This has been very, this has been very informative.
Thank you, Karen. We are running up against the clock, so I'm sure if you have questions that you'd like to pose for Coleman, get more information. One of the things that always seems to come up in my mind is the amount of resources we have amongst ourselves. We have to find a way to share that stuff, because we can't all be, like, all of us have expertise in certain areas, but we need to like get out of the loop and share. Like what we learned this morning is just phenomenal. So I'm going to be on Blue Philadelphia, and then all those other things you mentioned, I think, are probably on your site to go to votes more. I am not even up with that. So the point is, we got to share this information, because we're all out there plotting to find it and be influential, but we're in silos, and I have a lot of other things on my mind, like my health ain't so good, and my wife's health ain't so good right now. So, let's share the information. That's the end of my speech, and we have to move on. So I can close this stuff up so you guys can chat. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So much.